The text says, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you so that you will love one another. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. Brothers and sisters, I don't know if I can say it any better. I'm saying that before the world began, God already planned for your adoption. He planned for you to be chosen for the purpose of hearing you bring him praise. You do God a disservice when you do not praise him. That's why you were created, to bring God glory. I didn't make that up. It's right there in the text, for his praise. And then I want to understand that you got to look at the who. Who did he choose? I know you think that you are special, and that's why God chose you. But let's listen to how Paul articulates it in 1 Corinthians 1, 26 20 through 29. He says, not many of you were wise according to the world's standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But look at verse 27. What did God do? But God chose what was foolish in the world, so that he could shame the wise. God chose what was weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what was lowly and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing the things that are, so that no human being may boast in his presence. God says, I did the choosing. I want to show off, according to Ephesians, my manifold glory. I want the world to see. Now, I chose the weak to shame the strong. I chose the wise, or the unwise, the foolish, to shame the wise. He said, I chose stuff that wasn't even in existence, so that I can shame the stuff that's in existence. I want you to understand now that God says, I did the choosing. So you can't boast. You can't talk about how good you are. You can't talk about how saved you are, how righteous you are. He says that no flesh would glory in his presence. You are to look at yourself and say, I'm worth nothing, then turn to look to God and see the splendor of his glory. That's who we are. That's who we've been created to be. Not only did he choose unilaterally, but his choice is unavoidable. The text says, you did not choose me, I chose you and appointed you. They go together. He says, I selected you for salvation, and I selected you for service. Jesus took the initiative for the purpose or the intention of your service. You might, especially in the context that we find ourselves in, you might be able to avoid Uncle Sam's draft. You might come up with some dubious plan to evade the military pulling you into service. But let me tell you, when God chooses you, you can't hide from service. There is no hiding place. He chose Abraham from a pagan nation because no one could hide from him. He chose Moses from the backside of a desert because nobody can hide from him. Gideon was trying to hide from the Midianites, and on a makeshift threshing floor, he was trying to hide, but when God came looking for him, he knew exactly where he was. I want you to understand that if you have been chosen, saved by God, you have a responsibility. Now, I know some of you are saying, yeah, I know that I've been saved, but my former life is such that I don't have a testimony in this community. People don't want to hear me. I don't think I'll be a good witness for God. First of all, that's not your choice. If he chose you and selected you, you are in his service. May I say that you are in God's selective service. Paul says, formerly, in 1 Timothy 1:12, formerly I was a blasphemer. He says, further on, I was chief among sinners, but God appointed me, same word, appointed me to his service. I want to tell you, brothers and sisters, that if God can use the chiefest of sinners, that God can use you. And that's the testimony you will have in the community once you come out of the world and you're saved and you begin to testify and witness to other people. They'll be able to say, look, if God can do it for that scoundrel, if God can do it for him and for her, I know God can do it for me. Your testimony, because you are moving out with a transformed life, will have a great impact because you are selected. And I want to tell you, you cannot hide from God. I know some of you think that if you don't come to church, you're hiding from God. Some of you think if you stay away from certain Christians that you're hiding from God, or if you stay away from the community, those who are active in church, and you stay away from them, you can hide from God, but you can't do it. David mused this idea, deliberated on this idea of trying to escape God. And he said to himself, where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? He says, if I ascend to heaven, you're there. He said, if I take my knapsack and I descend all the way down to Sheol, so you're still there. I want you to understand you've been saved and called into service, and you cannot hide from God. Now, perhaps that's a bit too theological. Let me bring it back on ground level for us here today. Doc, you'll remember this. The old folk will say, when you're talking about God, he's too low. You can't go under him. They say he's too wide. You can't go around him. They say too high. You can't go over him. That is to say, brothers and sisters, you can't get away from God. If God has called you into service, the best thing for you to do is go ahead and do what God has called you to do. He's going to get his glory anyway. You know, that's what I used to tell my children. If it's time to mow the yard or do something in the yard, you can fumble around the house all day if you want to. And you can go outside and you can kick this and throw that. But at the end of the day, Yeah, that yard gonna get mowed. And I'm trying to say to you, you can fumble around, kick stuff and be mad with this and mad with that, but at the end of the day, and that's what happens. That's what happens. You wonder why do people decide to serve God once they're old? Yeah, because they've been kicking around all this time, and then they still got to come back to it. Yeah, because this is what God designed you to do. I'm saying, why not go ahead and do it now when God is pleased with it and you can enjoy it? God has called us, and it is unavoidable. We have a commission to get into the world and to win them for Jesus Christ. A martial arts master entered an exhibition, and he instructed his assistant to procure for him 10 cinder blocks. During the exhibition, he had planned to break 5 blocks, but we'll get 10. During the exhibition, he, without any problems, broke the 5. And when his assistant asked what to do with the other 5, you remember, don't you? Yeah. He says, the 5 that I did not use, I don't need those, discard those. He says, but the 5 I broke, take them to the house. You don't mind my making a correlation here and telling you that all of us are broken stones. We've been used in the service of God. But the good news is, Dwight, you've been chosen. You are a stone, according to 1 Peter. You are a stone. And can I say, perhaps you've been busted, but you've been chosen. Perhaps you've been broken, but you've been chosen. Life has not been kind to you, but you've been chosen. And you don't look as good as the other cinder blocks, the other 5, and they've been moved on, and you're brittle, you're broken, but guess what? You're in the Father's house. That's what the Bible says. In 1 Peter, he says that Jesus is the cornerstone. He says, but we are stones. And we've been brought together to build a house. We need each other. And I want you to understand, brothers and sisters, Christ is the cornerstone. And we all come in different shapes and sizes, but we've all been chosen. We've all been chosen by God. And you may have to go through various trials in this life, but your comfort ought to be is, I've been chosen. That's what's going on when Peter is writing to those who are in exile. He says, listen, don't try to make your mark in this world. He says, you already got a mark on you. He says, you've already been chosen. And I can celebrate, I can go through life, and even though the great institutions of this world will never recognize who I am, it doesn't matter because I've already been chosen. Y'all ain't saying that, are you? I'm just saying, you know how it is now I got to let you go. I'm sorry I held you long, but I remember being brought up in an athletic kind of scenario, and I wasn't the most athletic. But that has to be said in the context of Olympians, future Olympians that I hung out with. And so there, during those times when a basketball court was out in the dirt, you stood on the side. And when they were choosing teams, you didn't expect to be chosen first. At least I didn't. I mean, we got Olympians out here playing, and I stood there on the side, and you see all the dust and people moving about, and you're sizing up the people standing next to you, and the greatest privilege there is, you just want to be chosen. And the day comes finally when after they've picked everybody, that they pick you and you get on the team. I'm telling you right now, listen, Arthur, to be on that team, it didn't matter even if I was chosen last. But I'm still on the team. I'm sorry, will it, Posey, I'm trying to keep it calm now. Listen, all I'm saying is that I've been chosen by God. I may not be the best on the team because there are other Olympians who've gone before. But I'm just glad that I was chosen. And that's where you ought to be. That's where you ought to be. You ought to be just glad that you were chosen for the team. Don't worry about who you're standing next to. And don't worry about what that part is on the team. Celebrate God that He chose me. That's what David meant. Listen, that's what David meant. He said, I'd be happy to be a doorkeeper. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? He said, I wouldn't mind being a doorkeeper in the courts of God. And that's all I'm saying. I'm saying I don't mind being a water boy. Y'all ain't saying nothing. I don't mind being a water boy as long as I'm on the team.